I would say
Okay.
you have to break it down into small steps. And if you look at the enormity, most people, the enormity of it will be scared by it. So they will let fear take over in what I've experienced. Everybody has their own experiences. They will let fear take over and they won't start because fear can be a very dangerous thing.
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
We're good? All right. Let's do this. We are excited today. We have a guest, Michael Dash, and I'm excited about him coming on. When I saw him, his name pop up and was reading his bio, I thought I was excited about it because I've got some experience with what he has written about and what he looks like he's passionate about. So, Michael G. Dash, let me tell you about him. He's an entrepreneur, best-selling author of Chasing the High, recovering addict, speaker, and philanthropist. He founded the FATE series, which stands for From Addict to Entrepreneur, published on Thrive Global and Medium, and has a 12-week FATE mentoring program to help entrepreneurs and business leaders regain control of their addictive and compulsive behaviors. Information for that can be found at michaeldash.com/fate. He's also the co-founder of Activated, and that can be found at iamactivated.com, a social movement focused on inspiring a culture of positivity, authenticity, passion, empathy, and resilience. Michael is an avid volunteer, fundraiser, and mentor, and is dedicated to bringing positive change to leaders of all kinds. If you want, you can reach out to Michael via email at michael@michael-.com. That is MICHAEL at michael-.com, DASH, regarding partnering or other opportunities, or check out his website at michael-.com. Michael, welcome to the Jerry Brazy podcast. How are you?
I am great. Thank you. I just want to make one correction. It's michaelg-.com on all of that.
I apologize, michaelg-.com.
Yeah, my mom would be very upset if we left the G.
No problem. Michael
and
G.
So
Dash.
my website views, right?
Yes, right. So the FATE series, tell me a little bit about that and becoming and the recovering addict. I have a bunch of questions for you. I got to kind of slow down a little bit because I have the background that is both entrepreneur. I love to work. I work a ton. I kind of have all the behaviors that that your intro talks about. And then at the same time, I've had multiple addictions, all physical, nothing really mental. But so I wanted to just start with that because that's what I have the most experience at, and I was looking forward to your take. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so the FATE program started as I myself have been through addiction of both gambling and drugs and money and a variety of other things, including entrepreneurship. And I was in a lot of different entrepreneur groups, and I saw a lot of my fellow comrades, so to speak, suffering from addictions in silence, hiding, and having their ego really prohibit them from really discussing it in public and being okay to admit that we all have weaknesses, we all have struggles, we're all the same. We all have things that we battle with. And being that I was experienced, I had a 20-year gambling addiction, an 8-year cocaine addiction, a 7-year Adderall addiction, and then smoked a lot of marijuana along the way. I knew what it was like to battle all those demons, to work your ass off, and then excuse me if it's a PG show, but
it's not a PG show. Have at it.
Oh, great. To work your damn ass off and to want to just escape for a few hours, whether it was going to the bar, whether it was drinking, whether it was, smoking, whether it was gambling, whether it was whatever. People had, there's so many things, eating, porn. I mean, all these things, all these addictions that not only people have, but really entrepreneurs, because they're dealing with the challenges of running a business and they don't feel like they have a lot of people to turn to who will understand. So then they turn to these behaviors. So I wanted to, because I overcame it myself, I felt like I was in a good position to help others, and I developed a 4-step process to take them through that. And I work with them over a 12-week period of time. and really have seen a lot of lives transform, including my own.
And how do you, it's a fine line, it seems to me, between, dedication, hard work, and addiction. And I say that from the context of I've always been a hard worker, long hours, things of that nature. I'm a street kid that has had a lot of success because of that work ethic. Some people look at that work ethic over my career and have said, that's impressive and well done. And then other people look at it and they're like, yeah, you're addicted to work. How does your wife put up with you? How do you live with that? You'd rather be at work than be anywhere else. And I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it seems to be there's, to some people and through some people's eyes, there's a distinction there between hard work and the effort and the energy and the time that it takes to build a successful business and is another person's addiction possibly. How do you draw that line?
The distinction, I mean, if it's all about living a fulfilled life, right? And living a healthy life, both mentally and physically. So it's a combination. I mean, if you're working 12 to 14 hours every day and you're not going to the gym or doing any exercise, and you're not reading or doing meditation or going to yoga or doing something to mentally stimulate yourself outside of work, then I would say that's unhealthy. Like, there needs to be an incorporation of being able to take care of yourself. So you're in the right mental place in life, not just in business. Very easy for us entrepreneurs to go and build a great business and be like a 10 out of 10 in business, but then suck in life and be like a 4 out of 10 in life. And there's a lot of people out there who do that. So, what I found is that it is all about assuring that every single day you are taking care of yourself before anybody else. Because if you're not taking care of yourself mentally, if you're not taking care of yourself physically, at least a half hour on each a day, then you're not going to be healthy and you're not going to be there for your wife. You're not going to be there for your kids. And, when you are taking care of yourself, then it's easier to connect with others. If you find things that you can do, like if you go to the gym, right, then you can connect with people at the gym. If you go on hikes, there's hiking groups. If you go on any outdoor activities, you can find people who enjoy doing the same things, and then you build connection. And that's also a big part of it too. Having strong connections outside of work and family so that you have a really healthy, fulfilled life.
So the in and of itself, as an addiction, work, as long as it is, as long as it has some sort of other behavior, I would say is or is not. I mean, I don't think it is. In your opinion, the same thing as, say, a cocaine addiction, and by that I mean I go to the gym. The last couple of weeks I haven't, but I go to the gym, have religiously for years and years and years. And then I also make sure that I have quality time with my kids and my family. Maybe not quantity time, but quality time. And that's worked very well for me, and I'm pretty happy doing that. And so I push back when I hear about work addictions. And if you're all encompassed and work is your entire life, I think is what I hear you saying, then that's where you have to stop and think about it. But if you're doing these other things and I play pool as an example, right? So I have all of these outside interests also, including my family, that to me feels well-rounded. But again, by others, I might be accused of being addicted to work.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, don't worry about what other people think. If you're fulfilled and you're living a healthy life, then who really cares? As long as your family is good with it. But it really is about having those other practices in your life. If you have a pool club, right, then you're making connections outside of what connection is so important, because what leads to a lot of depression now and a lot of addiction, period, is isolation. Right. So if you're isolating yourself, if you're working all day long in an office with no team around you or anything, it's just you working for 14 hours a day, I don't think that's the healthiest behavior. But if you are breaking up your day and you're, going to the gym, or you have your pool club, or you're doing some mindful things that are like listening to positive podcasts or inspiring people or reading a personal development book, 10 to 20 pages a night, or, again, going and on a hike or going to the gym like you said you did, then you have a much more balance. I don't really believe in balance. I believe in fulfillment, but then you have a fulfilled life. I feel like we all have buckets, okay, in life, right? We have our work bucket. We have our philanthropic bucket. Well, if we don't, we should. We have our health bucket. We have our physical activity bucket. We have our mental, growth bucket. We have our family bucket. We have a religious bucket, a spiritual bucket. And I feel like you need to fill all those buckets at least halfway every single week. And that, to me, is what fulfillment is all about. All those buckets partially filled, and then you're fulfilling your life. And that's the way I believe that you can overcome a lot of addictive behavior.
And so, talking about the worst of addictions, of the ones that you listed for us earlier, drugs, gambling, which one do you was the most severe? And I'm asking this question because I'm interested from the perspective of multi-addictions. You're probably the best person to answer for us. A physical addiction for me, like cocaine, seems to me to be much worse than a gambling addiction. But that's, again, just from somebody who's never had a gambling addiction or one that's really not physical. So I'm curious what, from your own perspective, is there one that's worse, or are they equally as bad, or?
Well, I mean, I think part of it depends on the person. Part of it depends on, what you're doing. So for me, cocaine was bad, but I was a weekend warrior type cocaine user. So I didn't use it every day, but I gambled every single day of my life.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Right.
So gambling was worse out of those two. But in terms of the addiction itself, because every single day I went to sleep and woke up thinking about gambling. But I've been clean from gambling for 14 years. Out of everything I mentioned, Adderall was actually the worst addiction for me, because I took Adderall every single day when I was in my office, and it would elevate my emotional patterns and how I would react and how I would treat people. So it affected how I was as a leader. And frankly, I was a douchebag the majority of the time. I wasn't a great leader. I didn't lead from empathy. And I had my business for 11 years, I would say, until the last 2 years when I started growing and changing, like I was a dick. Like I ruled from a place, I led from a place of kind of like a correction versus partnership. I led from a place of scolding versus growth. And, that's not the way to lead a company. It's not the way to inspire employees. During that time, go ahead.
Did you know you were doing that? Or is that a byproduct of the drug you were taking?
It was really I kind of knew, but I was on edge all the time. It was a byproduct of the drug, really. Adderall is like cocaine.
Adderall you take for what reason?
I don't take it anymore, but I took it because
what do they prescribe it for?
For ADD or ADHD.
Oh, okay,
so kids.
It's supposed to calm you down then, theoretically?
No, it's supposed to focus you.
Okay, sharpen
and it did. I could get a shit ton of work done. And that's why I loved it so much, because I'm like, I'm going to crush the day. And you would go in there and fire it up like you're about to play a football game. And so the way you react to people, you're just like very like kind of a much higher elevated state of mind, state of emotion. And I acted from an emotional standpoint versus a constructive business-like standpoint in everything. And that's partially what landed me in a 6-year legal battle with my ex-business partner. 6 years.
And so almost a hyper-aggression?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's interesting. For me, I've had thousands of employees, and I never get excited. One of the skills that I learned, again, surviving on the streets when I was a kid, that I brought to bear as a business owner, is that I just don't ever get excited. So it doesn't matter how ugly it gets. The downside, and then there's good and there's bad there. There's good in that, no matter how busy it gets or how crazy life is or how much stuff gets thrown at me, the employees can always count on me to be that voice of reason and calm and listen to it, and I don't ever get upset. The flip side to that, though, is equally that I don't enjoy things as much as other people probably do. So while it's a benefit to me to be calm and keep my composure and be there for people and be that foundation, again, then nothing's free in the world, obviously, and so then I don't celebrate things quite the same way as other people would do.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, there's pros and cons to everything, right? But as an entrepreneur and going through my life, I didn't really celebrate a lot of things either. I just was like, all right, that's off the checklist. What's next?
Yeah.
I was always chasing, like my book right here, free plug, chasing the high. That's what I was doing, whether it was drugs, whether it was running a marathon, whether it was fundraising $100,000 for Leukemia Lymphoma Society, whether it was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, or whether it was writing this book. I've always been chasing the high that I got out of all of these things. But at the end of the day, they're all fleeting. They're great accomplishments, but they're fleeting. Then you're left with this emptiness unless you're living that fulfilled life that I'm talking about, where you're, really focused on taking care of yourself and accomplishing things in your business combined on a daily basis and being there, of course, for your family and being connected to your friends.
Is there a personality type that those rules don't apply to? I mean, we all hear these stories about CEOs that, I guess again, you could look at that and say they've been divorced, multiple times, but there are examples of people out there that are CEOs that love what they do, go to work 7 days a week. They're in their 80s and they feel like they've lived a fulfilled life. Certainly those are anomalies, but is there a certain personality type that maybe that finds their fulfillment not in that complete bucket the way you described?
Yeah, I mean, Warren Buffett, he's the perfect example.
Yeah,
right?
Great example.
Yeah, but he's also, through his business, been able to travel all over the world, been able to experience all these things that maybe we don't look at because we're like, this guy's working all the time. But he's been able to experience different cultures, different and so those are, he's obviously an anomaly.
Yeah.
There certainly are. I'm actually addressing today's day and age. And today's day and age, with the amount of distractions there are in the world, with the short-term attention spans of everybody, with, all these social media channels coming at you left and right, it's a different world today than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's not that long ago, 20 years ago, right?
Right.
But like 20 years ago, how many times I don't even know if I had a cell phone 20 years ago. Maybe I did. But everybody's attached to their cell phone. They don't digital detox. They don't take it. I even fall into it. I think it's important that now the older generation, I consider myself old at this point. I'm 45, but older than me, right?
Right.
Maybe they don't have as many of those distractions with the digital stuff going on. And I agree. Look, my father was an entrepreneur, okay? He worked his ass off. That's where I got my work ethic. He left at 8 a.m, came home at 8 p.m. He didn't come to any of our sporting events because he was building a company, supporting the family. That's how it was.
Right.
Well, I think he lived a fulfilled life. I love my dad, but I don't think he did. I got to be honest with you. I really don't. I don't think he lived life to the fullest. He didn't really travel a lot. He was successful in business, but that's different. And he's successful in life. He had, me and my brother. But true fulfillment, I don't think so. But again, everybody defines it differently.
Sure.
So who am I to say? I can only speak for myself and for kind of today, what I see with the entrepreneurs I'm surrounded with, because I'm part of a lot of different organizations. They're entrepreneur-based organizations only. So I hang out in these groups of people, and that's my audience. That's my customer, and those are my friends. So, I know what they go through on a daily basis.
What's the thing to look out for? Maybe not just for an entrepreneur. Let's say you're driven at whatever it is that you're doing. You ran marathons. It says here you ran 4 marathons. So as an example, I know people, who are in fantastic shape, and in my estimation, spend way more time at the gym, losing out on other parts of life. But they'll tell you that's what I love to do, and I'm a guy that goes to the gym for hour and a half, 2 hours a day. But they say that's what they love to do. So that is an example, and then contrast that with an entrepreneur maybe that's just out of control. What would they look? Do both people look at it the same way, and what would they look for that might give them some indication that you're taking it too far, you're out of control?
I think if you're isolating yourself from in whatever you're doing, even if you're at the gym, you can be completely isolated. Just because there's people around you doesn't mean you're connected to anybody, right? I think isolation is a huge thing because it affects mental illness, it affects addiction, it affects your behavior patterns, it affects your ability to relate with others, it affects connection. So I think if you are working nonstop and you don't feel human connection, not digital, not connected on the internet, not connected on the telephone, but actual human connection. If you don't, then I think that's a real sign. Like if you see yourself in a robotic life that every day starts looking the same, then I believe the system always needs a shock. It always needs to kind of a reset button and to kind of change things around a little. It's good for you mentally. It's good for you physically. Even if you don't change the activities, but you switch the times of the day that you're doing them, that's actually healthy for you.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in two things. One, right along those lines. One is that I think you should live in the uncomfortable. I particularly if you have some aspirations for being successful. But life generally, living in an uncomfortable life, meaning you're always challenging yourself. For me, that's been probably as important as anything else, accepting that uncomfortable and then working with it. And then the other thing that goes along with that is, for me, and I say this on my podcast all the time, I can't stand the thought of being on the 8:20 bus, and getting to work at 9:00 and being on the 5:10 bus and being home at 6 and eating dinner at 7 and watching TV from 8 to 10 and going to bed and then repeat. That makes me want to shoot myself in the face. Having said that, for some people, again, that works. But so while I'm yelling and screaming and your reaction is exactly what I would expect your reaction to be on that, there are some people that I suppose that's a fulfilled life. I don't believe that. I don't think that's the case. I think that there is a lack of risk taking, maybe not the energy to do it. Maybe they just don't want to put in the work. But I think that a majority of people secretly would like to not be stuck in that circle that you're talking about. I was just doing it I was talking about it from my perspective, but you're saying that if you're caught in that cycle, even if you eat dinner at 5:10 when you get off work and don't watch TV at 9:00, as long as you're changing it up, you can affect some change.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, here's what a lot of people don't want to face, is that we all have a choice in life. Whether we have kids, whether we have a family, whether we have a 9 to 5, whether we have bills to pay, whether we have a business of our own, whether we want to travel, whether we don't want to travel, whether we want to volunteer, whether we don't want to volunteer. We all have choices and we can all make them. But a lot of people tell themselves a story and they keep repeating that story. Yeah. And that story then becomes their fact. And their fact, and look, my mother is like this. Like she has repeated certain things for 20 years. She will never change. Sorry, Mom. Sorry if you're listening, but she will never change, right? And it's
regardless of whether or not it's true.
Completely, it's true to her. So that's all that matters, right?
Right.
And but the thing that people don't understand is that change is easy. People think change is difficult because they've convinced themselves of it. Sure. But it's actually very easy. If you and I wanted to change anything in our lives, we could do it right now. Now, if we attach that change to the end result that we have in our minds of that change creating, well, then that's not as easy. You actually have to work at that. You have to be consistent with that change to get the affected result. But too many people connect the simple thing of changing one day with the end result. So, like, if you weigh 300 pounds and you want to lose 100 pounds, and you know that dieting is the first thing you need to change, and you might get overwhelmed with the thought of, I can't change, because it's going to take me forever to lose 100 pounds. So why even start? But you can start today. Just don't eat that donut today.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow, don't eat it tomorrow. And then go to the gym, start walking outside for a half an hour. And, change is so easy. It's so damn easy. And it shouldn't be this monumental thing we get scared about. It should be make the slightest shift, the slightest thing. And then tomorrow, do it again. And then the next day, make another slight change. And then do that again. And all of a sudden, all you've done is made a couple of slight changes, but then you start having momentum. And then you can make a bigger change. And, people get so caught up in the end result instead of the journey along the way. And it's the journey along the way that gets us to where we want to be.
And I think that
you have to build momentum and start small.
Yeah, and that momentum, that's perfectly put, because in looking at success, when you start out, there's two problems. One, there's there's not the realization that it's going to take years and years and years and possibly decades and decades to build a successful business, just to use that example. And then in large part, society, social media, the media, they look at these 25-year-old, 28-year-olds that create these 1 in a trillion apps. They call them unicorn companies. And the kid's 28 years old and he's a multi-billionaire and he's Mark Zuckerberg and he's living the life. And they equate that with success. So if I don't drop out of college at 24, start this killer app, and I'm not a millionaire by 26, you can go on Reddit and all of these other sites and find just kid after kid after kid after kid talking about, I'm 23 and I want to be a millionaire by 26. What do I do? And sometimes I have to jump in and say, well, get a job, number one, and realize that it's going to take you 20 years. So
yeah, don't sell drugs.
Yeah, don't sell drugs. So I understand, I agree with you, and I wish that people understood that journey that you're talking about starts with the first step. That's a cliche, but also understanding that losing 100 pounds is not easy. And so if you're stepping on the scale every single day, it's going to make it that much harder for you. You have to understand in some context the enormity of what's in front of you in order to have any chance, I think, of being successful at it. That's my thought. What do you think?
I would respectfully disagree. I would say you have to break it down into small steps. And if you look at the enormity, most people, the enormity of it will be scared by it. So they will let fear take over in what I've experienced. Everybody has their own experiences. They will let fear take over and they won't start, because fear can be a very dangerous thing. But if you break it down into small steps, don't step on the scale. Step on the scale once every 2 weeks. But be consistent with the behaviors that you're committing to, of not eating past 8 o'clock, of walking for 30 minutes for the first week, then walking 40 minutes the second week, then walking 45 minutes the third week. Or however you're going to approach breaking that down and incorporating healthier things into your life. Because I've been there before, like I want to lose 10 pounds or whatever, and I step on the scale every day and I mind F myself.
Yeah.
Right? So I believe, no, don't look at the enormity of it. Break it down into small steps, keep it simple, okay, and make small progress. Because again, the small progress, the baby steps, lead to the momentum that we need to create to make the massive change. It's like a snowball effect.
You don't concentrate on 100 pounds, you concentrate on a pound.
Correct. You concentrate not even on the pounds at first, you concentrate on the action, on the behavior. Right?
Right.
So get to the gym every day, or make sure you walk every single day. Make sure you're drinking a gallon of water every single day, right? Make sure you're not eating after 8 p.m. every single day.
So how does
those are achievements, though. You check those off every day, you start feeling better about yourself. Then you start gaining momentum.
I think the pushback I would have on that, though, is if you are, and I don't disagree with one foot in front of the other and you got to take the first step. How does somebody then, if they are out there on their own and they want to lose 100 pounds, at some point you have to understand that 100 pounds is going to take you a year to lose or however long, whatever's reasonable. But then breaking that down further to, but don't worry about the 100 in the year, worry about this week and the first steps. Is that, I guess you could Facebook your book, join groups, clubs, all of that to really, I suppose the world is inundated with ways to get back in shape, but that mental wall that stops so many people, I think, from even contemplating the first step, is the tough one to get over. And I suppose that's why there's podcasts and we're sitting here having this conversation, is to try to give people that understanding. I have trouble seeing where somebody would be able to come up with that on their own, or
but they don't have to. They don't have to come up with it on their own. Not in this country, at least. Maybe in other countries where they don't have access to social media and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And all these, but they don't have to. So it's not even something to consider, because there's so much support out there.
Before 10 years ago,
there's this guy Andy Frischilla. I don't know if you ever heard of this guy. He's got a big podcast. He's he's very well known out there. He started this challenge called 75 hard or 75 pound, right, on Instagram. And his challenge is that everybody that you work out, it's a 75-day challenge. You work out twice a day. I believe it's at least 15 minutes indoor, or half an hour indoor and a half an hour outdoor. No matter where it is, half an hour each. You drink a gallon of water every day. You read 10 pages minimum of a personal development book every day. And you take a cold shower every day, and you post a picture on Instagram every day for 75 days straight. And this guy came across I didn't know who he was, but I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I just started following it, and I see that 400-pound person every day committed to it, posting a picture. And I see the changes that are going on with these people. It's a great movement. It's free. Yeah. He's not looking for anything out of it, but he said 90% of the people who started fall off.
Right.
So, but this is the type of support groups that are out there, for people who want to do stuff like that. So if there is anybody who falls in that category, go check it out. 75-pound sign on Instagram. It's really fascinating to watch. And I think I'm going to do it. I'm not sure yet. But for me personally, I don't want to I don't know. Posting a picture every day is.
Yeah. But the 75 days is a long time, and I think that it's a long time in our heads. It's a long time in our heads.
75 days is not long. I'm sorry.
No. Yeah, hang on a second. What I was saying is 75 days in our head is a long time, when in reality, 75 days goes in a heartbeat. And when you're faced with trying to get something done, you look at it and go, 75 days, I can't do that. And then 75 days of sitting on the couch go by in a heartbeat, and you're like, oh, fuck, I could have done that. And then, I don't know, then you're beating yourself up twice as bad, and then you're stuck in that circle, that rut, because you failed. You knew you could have done it in 75 days. It went by easily. You thought it was more than it was. And when in reality, it's fairly straightforward and simple.
It's the story that we tell ourselves. Whatever the story is we tell ourselves is going to be our truth. We're going to walk. Words matter. It took me years and years and years to recognize the negative shit I said about myself actually affected how I performed in life, how I showed up in life, because I was always beating myself up for the mistake I made. I wasn't proud of what got me there. It was always the mistake. It was always the inner critic in me and in a lot of us, right, that want to break us down for what we're not doing instead of look at what we are doing. So if we celebrate more of what we are doing, then it's easier for us to commit to something and to actually move through it. So instead of thinking about those 75 days, think about, hey, I'm joining this amazing group. Look at all these other people who are doing it. Look at these pictures. This is crazy. I'm doing it day 1, day 2, day 3. And you see all these other people doing it also. And then you don't feel like you're completely alone. And that 75 days doesn't keep banging you in the head.
Yeah, right. The other thing that we didn't have to, and again, in terms of losing weight or being healthy or whatever we're talking about, they didn't have, none of this existed 15 years ago. So how did we ever do it before then? So I innately, I think people understand that. But also, in terms of addiction, I don't know that I've ever seen anything more addictive than cell phones. At least in my life, it's a constant fight with. I have a 22-year-old, a 20-year-old, and an 18-year-old. And we have rules. It doesn't matter how old they get. You can't have the phone at the table while you're eating or any of those kind of things. But if you go to any restaurant today, there's whole families sitting at tables. Everyone's on their phone and nobody's talking. I know for myself, and you alluded to it earlier. I said to my wife just the other day, as a matter of fact, it's funny that you brought this up, that work for me dictates, because of the emergency nature of the jobs that I do, I have to have a phone. I have to have my phone, but I look forward to the day, and it's a goal I'm setting for myself, that I can plug my phone in downstairs on the coffee table and come down and get it the next morning rather than have it next to me. So I'm aware of my dependency on this phone, and it mostly for me, it's work related, but for the majority of the population, it's an entertainment thing. I don't know. Again, you've got a lot more experience addictive wise than I don't know. I've ever seen anything quite like this, though. You're talking millions and probably billions of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's the dopamine hit that we get when we're on, these social media channels or wherever it is. And, I could do a much better job personally myself. It's one of the things that I'm working on. I actually just met a company out here in LA called Brick, BRICK, and they they have events that are free from mobile devices. So when you walk in, they turn your mobile device into a brick. That's why it's called Brick. And they put something over the top of your phone, this sticky thing. You can't see your phone while you're there. You can't use your phone for the 2 hours you're there networking or whatever it is that the event's around. So it's things like that I think are important. There's more groups out there that, where some entrepreneur groups where we actually go in to have dinner and they take our cell phones. So we connect. You could even take a basket at the table, shock your kids, take a basket and say, kids, put your phone in here.
Yeah.
Right. And just take them and put them on the side of the table until dinner's done.
Right.
I would love, if you do that, tell me. I would love to hear
that. And that compulsion, we need to recognize that. I don't think society has gotten to that point yet. You hear them talking about it, but I don't think society's got to the point yet where that compulsion to look at that phone is so strong. And I think you could almost view it as it's nothing, there's nothing bad. It's not like snorting cocaine. It's not like shooting heroin. How bad can it be for me to just check the scores? How bad can it be for me to just check my email real quick? But then you realize that you had 8 seconds and you grabbed your phone and looked at it in that 8 seconds you had between somebody drawing a breath and continuing on with their conversation. That to me seems like an addiction.
It's a complete addiction, and I would disagree. I would slightly disagree with you. I would say it's very bad. I think it's as bad as any drug. I mean, it's different. It's different, of course, but it's just as bad because it's creating all the problems we have in this world. If you really look at the problems, the people sitting behind their screens all day, whether it's their phone or their computer screen, and just hating on everything that's going on, right? And then the negativity that's going on and how we're poisoning people's minds. You look at all these mass shootings. I mean, most of these people who are doing mass shootings are addicted to being online. They're in hate groups. They're playing video games. They're shooting everybody up. This is what is going on in this country. So I would say it's definitely a problem. And there's a complete lack of connection among people. People do not know how to communicate with each other like we used to 20 years ago.
Absolutely. Right.
They don't know how to communicate. And that's all because of the cell phone. That's what it's from. If you walk down the street in New York City, I mean, you're bumping into people left and right because people are all looking at their phone while they're walking.
Yeah, and that's the thing about that too. It became ubiquitous so quickly, texting and communicating via 120 characters or whatever it is. It seems like one day I was bitching to my wife about just call that person. It takes longer to text, and then the next thing I know, I'm not having conversations, and all I do is text.
Nobody calls anymore. It's crazy. So I go out of my way to call people. I leave a message. I know I leave a message and I say, hey, I know this is really weird because I'm calling you and not texting you, but I just want to be a little bit different from everybody else. And I also leave voice notes. Voice notes are good.
Well,
but the thing is that people want to react immediately. They feel like as soon as they get a text, they got to respond immediately. As soon as they get an email, they got to respond immediately.
Yeah.
Like nothing is going to change. If it was time sensitive, you'd get a phone call.
Right.
If they needed to know something immediately, you would get a phone call. Yeah. You don't need to respond immediately. Nothing's going to change. The work, like I always say, for people who are working 12, 14, 16 hours, I said, hey, the work isn't going anywhere. It's going to be there tomorrow. Okay? You don't have to work 16 hours. Now, don't get me wrong. There's times that you have a product release or you need to get something in by a deadline. Those are, extraordinary times, and you have to do what you have to do during those times. But on a consistent basis, the work's going nowhere. Look, I chased everything. I chased the dollar. I wanted to become a millionaire. I wanted to have a successful business. And I did all of that. And you know where it left me? It left me completely empty. I wasn't fulfilled whatsoever. I wasn't happy because I didn't have any of the other things in my life. I didn't work on myself mentally. I wasn't in a good mental spot. I was just like so focused on the business all the time. Right. I didn't show up for relationships. I wasn't present in the relationship. I was on my phone, just like you were talking about, the whole time, doing the next deal, putting out the next buyer, hiring the next person, whatever it was. And physically, I would go up and down in spurts. I would be really physically active, and then I'd just completely crash and be terrible with how I would. So I wasn't consistent. All those behaviors lead to complete inconsistency. I was very consistent at being inconsistent.
I so far I love this podcast because you and the thing about podcasts and people that come on is they work so hard to get along. And some hosts really go out of their way to not disagree. You and I so far have disagreed on multiple things. And I think that kind of discourse is fantastic, and people can decide for themselves what they want to do. You make a good point. I don't know anybody successful that hasn't outworked all of their competition, and there's certainly a certain amount of people that struggle with doing that, but do that, and then they suffer harm from it, but emotionally and relationship wise and all of those things. But there are people, and this is kind of my message. I've done that. I've worked those 15, 18-hour days for 20 years. I've been married for 22 years, 3 kids in college. I think I consider myself a success based on the fact that I was a street kid. But I did all of those things. And so my message is that you can do that and have all of those other things, but it's very, very difficult. So I think you're right in the context of most people can't handle that and they need to have a more balanced life. But some of us can and have and are here to talk about it. And if that comes across as an inspiration or a deterrence, either way, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's I'm right, you're right, we're both right, because we both did it our way, and we both have, a different, probably definition of fulfillment, right? So, but, a friend said to me, he never met a millionaire who is working on vacation. And I sat with that, and I was like, thinking about all the friends I have who are millionaires, And I was like, yeah, when they're on vacation, they're actually on vacation. And like that's the new, I don't know if it's the new norm or not, but that's what I see more of, right? I believe you don't have to outwork the competition. I did believe that my whole life because that's how my father taught me. And I was the first one in and the last one out. I was you. I work 16 hours a day, but I now have a different point of view because I lived it and I see other things now and I've been exposed to another way. I believe it's more important to work smarter than it is harder. And I never believed that building my company. I wish I did because I would have done things differently. I only knew work harder. I wasn't as smart as the next guy. I was as street smart as everybody. But from a book smart standpoint, I wasn't the most book smart person. So I just outworked everybody. I hustled my ass off, and that's how I became successful. But these days, I think you can work smarter and you don't have to work harder, and you can be more successful than other people if you can find the way to do that. It's not so easy, but if you can find the way to do that, then that's the way to do it, in my opinion.
The back to the addiction for a second on the phones. I want to make sure I made myself clear on my thought, which is that there is the social stigma attached to cocaine. There's the stigma attached to heroin, and we all know those addictions are bad. What I was saying is that there's not that same addiction kind of stigma attached to phones, and although I think they're probably every bit as addictive. And how do you change that? How do you? It's something that on a massive scale, much more than any other kind of addiction, has affected everybody. But I guess that's I don't know. Maybe that's already left the barn and we're hosed. The door's open and everything's out.
You could say something similar to gambling because now gambling is basically legal in every state almost. There's like 4 states it's not legal. So people don't consider it like a bad addiction. They don't really consider it. You can gamble anywhere.
Sure.
It's easier to gamble than it is to get drugs. It's easier to gamble than it is to get alcohol because you can open your computer and gamble anywhere.
Right.
You can't do that. When you run out of drugs, you got to go find your drug dealer. You know, you run out of booze, you got to wait till the liquor store opens.
And in most states, gambling is state sponsored.
Yeah, and even if not, you go on the internet and you can gamble anywhere.
Yeah.
So, but with the cell phones, I think it's becoming a hotter topic. People are starting to speak about it. At least out here, I'm hearing it.
Yeah.
So I do think it will pick up more and more steam. But it just became an epidemic so quickly that, and it's all about money. I mean, this country's all about money. So, where there's money to be made, people turn their eyes.
Right.
Look at the vaping. The vaping. There was so much money in vaping. On people didn't pay attention to the lies that were being told and all this other stuff about how it was really affecting people. And now they're banning all these vaping companies because all these kids are dying.
Yeah. The addiction, back to that for a second on for myself, I try to illustrate to people, for me it was, I've had 13 back surgeries. And so for me it was
13?
13, yeah. And
you beat me by 11.
And so it started with the Vicodin, and then I figured out after, this is 20 years ago, I ran out of Vicodin over the weekend. And all of a sudden I was shaking. I didn't have any sense of what addiction was. And I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't gamble. And all of a sudden I'm shaking. I was like, well, I'm not going to let this control me. And I dumped 500 pills of Vicodin down the toilet. And I remember that very clearly. And then a few years later, the pain comes back. So now they put me on methadone. I was on methadone for 2 years, 250, 280 milligrams of methadone every day. And I couldn't go to the gym in the morning because I'd be so nauseous. So I was like, well, I got to kick this. And when I kicked that, I quit cold turkey. And it was like I describe it as the marrow was climbing out of my bones. It was like nothing I ever experienced. And then years later, again, the pain comes back and back on the pills I went. In this case, it was a morphine Oxycontin mix. And the same thing, only this time my body said, no, we're not going to quit cold turkey. And it took me 30 days to quit. And that's part of, from an addiction perspective, I was able to just kind of muscle through it because that's who I am, and I wasn't mentally addicted to it. I was physically addicted to it. But I don't think there's enough help, if you will, for people and addicts, because there's not an understanding. If anybody lived through what it takes to kick one of these drugs, and I don't know if it's the same for gambling, I think that they would be much more sympathetic to what it takes to kick these drugs, and therefore would be wanting to have more help, not less. You know, there's this stigma attached to it today. Anyway, that's my thought. You know, how hard it is to get off, and I would like to see that change, and like to see people understand that the significance, and decision makers understand how difficult this really is, because we have this opioid epidemic that's just killing everybody. But I don't think people really understand how addictive these drugs are.
Well, no, because it's easier to turn a blind eye than to actually deal with it. It's easier not to have to, try to really go above and beyond to help somebody. It's easier to just turn a blind eye.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the fact, but addiction is just like any disease. It is a disease, okay? And we need to lead from a place of empathy, because the way that disease takes over people's actions, it's not truly them acting. It's not the person they really are. They are under these drugs that a lot of times, they take it upon themselves to get addicted to, but a lot of times it's started by something as innocent as a back surgery. I mean, I had 2 back surgeries, so I understand exactly what you're talking about. And I got hooked on oxys when I was rehabbing. And I was popping oxys amongst all the other things I talked about.
Yeah.
I was popping oxys during the day, and I was feeling great. I was high on life at work. It was the best feeling ever. But it was getting out of control. For 8 months after my surgery, I was going and getting oxys on the street. That's when I decided, all right, enough of this.
Right.
I can't do this. I already know what addiction is. I can't do it. And I stopped. But my friend was not as, I was doing it with a friend of mine who was also an entrepreneur, and he was not as fortunate. And he moved on to heroin, and he ruined his whole business. He ended up in rehab, and he ended up in multiple relapses. And now he's building his life over again. And he's doing a great job right now, but he lost everything that he had. And it was because of sometimes it starts with a surgery. Sometimes it starts with a prescription. This country and these doctors are trained to just write prescriptions because they don't treat it as a disease. They treat it as a business. All the doctors, it's a business. It's not, it's more important about the business than it is about your health. That's a fact.
That's what I really liked about, and I haven't read your book, but Johan Hari's book, Chasing the Scream. Have you read that? He's got some really good ideas in there and details kind of what you're saying is the impact that drugs have on people personally, and then, of course, on society as a whole. And then that's his big thing, is that you need more empathy. Let's go to... I got some. You raised $100K for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. What's your attachment there? How did that come about?
So I had several of my brother's friends in high school. A couple of them died in their early 20s of leukemia, and I had several people die from blood-related cancers in my life. And I had entered the New York City Marathon when I was in New York. And then I moved to Utah to start my business. And while I was in Utah, I had gotten selected to run the New York City Marathon because it's a lottery. I walked into a pizza shop like the third day I was there. There was a little flyer for it was called Team in Training. They're an organization with Leukemia Lymphoma Society. They train you for marathons and you raise money for leukemia. So I thought, oh, wow, this is like divine intervention that I walked in here. And then I went to a meeting. I had this connection, not direct connection, but close enough to me that I was affected by it. I went to a meeting and I said, look, this sounds great. I get to join a group of people who are training for a marathon, and we raise money for a good cause. So right. I was in right away. And I ran 4 marathons with that organization, trained with them, raised all this money. And then I took like 3 years off, and then I got a call out of the blue that I was nominated for the Utah Man Woman of the Year competition, which is a 10-week fundraising blitz for Leukemia Lymphoma Society. And somebody had nominated me because, I was a successful business owner. I knew a lot of people, and they want to nominate influential people in the community, so you raise them a lot of money for them. So at first I kind of resisted because I was in a mental place where, no, it's going to take away from my business. I got to grow my business. And I was in a lawsuit with my ex-business partner at the time. But then I met the boy and girl of the year who were 4 and 5 years old, and they had acute lymphoblastic leukemia. And I was like, all right, there's no way I can say no now.
Yeah, sure.
Two little kids.
Right.
So I did it, and I raised $75,000 in 10 weeks, and it was an amazing experience. I built a team around me, and it was amazing. And then a couple of years later, I got the opportunity to go to Mount Kilimanjaro and raise money. It was called Climb for a Cure. So I raised money again for them, and I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. And that's actually the cover of this book, in Chasing the High, is a picture from this is when I got to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. I actually took this picture, and they were able to replicate it on the book.
That's cool. Good for you.
It was a great moment. Yeah.
You're to be commended for that. I lost my father-in-law to cancer last year, and now my mother-in-law has been battling it from day one, pancreatic cancer in this case, and fuck cancer. It's it's just, that's all I can say is fuck cancer, because I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, and good luck with your mother-in-law.
Yeah, I think it's my mother-in-law. Yeah, so the two of them got cancer at the same time, and two different cancers. But yeah, and I wish there was answers for that, and I don't feel like we're doing enough on that front. And the fact that you're out raising money for it, or have to be out there raising money for it, somehow doesn't seem right to me either. But I don't know what the answer is. Seems like if we could put a man on the moon, maybe throw some of these billions at just fucking fixing this problem.
You know what? This is something that every one of your listeners can do, is to go out and volunteer.
Yeah.
Okay. And then take your kids out to volunteer, or take your employees out to volunteer. If you're feeling depressed, go volunteer. You'll lose that depression real quickly.
Yeah. Perspective is a great thing, isn't it?
100%. 100%. Because you know what? A lot of people don't do is they're not grateful for what they do have. They focus on what they don't have.
Yeah.
So the most humbling experiences in my life are volunteering and traveling. And that volunteering and traveling are the two things that really ground me and allow me to realize how fortunate I really am to not only be living today for all the shit that I did to myself and to others, but mostly myself, but that, hey, I got a roof over my head. I got food in the fridge. I got a book. I mean, I'm talking to you. I mean, I have everything to be fortunate about. And anybody who's listening to this, whether you lose your job, whether you lose a loved one, whether you break up with somebody, whether you're going through some hard times, go and volunteer at a homeless shelter. Go and volunteer for leukemia patients, for kids. Go visit a hospital. Go do something there. And you will not only be doing something good, but you'll feel better about yourself for doing it. And you'll gain that perspective that you were talking about that most people just don't have.
We agree 100% there. I preach that perspective is everything. Having been to Africa twice in the last 3 years, I say that and again, I stole food as an 8-year-old to eat, and I never forget that myself. So I have that perspective. When somebody asked me how bad my life is, I was like, well, not as bad as when I had to steal food to eat. And then I went to Africa, and I've been to China, and in both, Africa's much worse than China, but in both cases, there's poverty unlike anything we have any sense of here. And once you've seen that, if you can come back, there's something the matter with you if you can come back from that and not feel entitled. If you can come back from that and not have a sense of entitlement. If you don't have that sense of entitlement, I think there's something the matter with you, because that's poverty on another scale. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly on the travel. You have to get out to really see how bad. We have it so good here here we are. Yeah, you're talking to me on a computer. Everybody's got a television. Everybody's got a phone. Everybody's got video games.
Yeah, but you know, the fact is, though, that there's plenty of places in this country where it's just as bad as anywhere in Africa. I'm in LA now. You come to LA and you see the amount of homeless people on the streets here. It's depressing. It's really depressing. Something needs to be done about it. But regardless, you can volunteer right in your local communities and you can see it. The homeless problem in this country is out of control. And, but, that's another story for another day. But I'm actually going to Madagascar next week.
Ah, well, what are you doing there?
I go on this retreat every year, and there's a chapter in my book about this retreat where I found flow. I discovered flow. That's what changed my life. So I'm going on this retreat. It's called Unconventional Life. It's the fourth one I've been to. I've gone through this personal transformation about something in my life every time. So I'm excited to see what's next because I've come so far. But when I discovered flow is all about the process of following your intuition. And if it's not a hell yes in your life, it should be a fuck no in anything that you do. And you go through this process of clearing out your limiting beliefs and then implanting positive beliefs. So the belief that change is difficult, you clear that through this tapping. I don't know if you're familiar with tapping and EMDR.
Yeah, EMDR therapy.
Yeah. Stuff I was familiar with till I was introduced to them. And I thought it was all bullshit. I'm from the East Coast. I thought all this nonsense is shishi nonsense. But I was so miserable in my life at the time, I did it. And it actually changed my life. It changed my perspective and my thought process.
They do that together with rapid eye movement, I think, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Right. So you tap like in back of your neck, and then you're going back and forth and repeating these things out loud. And it kind of cleanses you of it. It actually works.
And there's quite a bit
if I was listening to it, I'd be like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? But it actually works.
Yeah, I got introduced to that. I don't know. I read something, I was on the internet on my phone, goddammit. And I came across an article. And so I read it. And in it, though, it sounds like that's been substantiated. There's enough research on this now that I was fascinated by tapping while you're kind of living what it is that is bothering you. And then there's some sort of rapid eye movement, and you are rewiring your brain essentially.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And they use it for. I know what it was in. I have one of my kids is going into the military, and military has always been a big thing for us. So it's a great help for PTSD. Is I think really where it got its start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I talk about a little bit of that in the book, and then I have a chapter called The Habit of Habit Making. And it's really important. I'm a big believer that we need to have, I talked about it a little bit earlier with you, that we need to have strong habits that are built into our life to be completely fulfilled. And the whole point is that as we continue to grow and evolve as humans, that we replace old habits with new habits, because the old habits, even if they're positive, they're not going to always resonate with us. We're not going to always want to go run 5 miles, or we're not going to always want to go, to the gym, or we're not going to always want to do something. Like different things resonate with us as, I listen to different music now than I did 20 years ago, right?
Yeah, so sure.
It's important to replace some of your old habits with newer, healthier habits as you continue to evolve, and it won't be so boring for you. You won't fall into that monotonous thing. Oh, I don't want to do this. Right? You find things that really resonate with you and help you continue to grow, and you build those habits into your life. And that's how, in my belief, you can overcome addiction, you can overcome depression, you can overcome isolation, you can overcome a lot of those things by building a solid base of habits in your life.
Michael, I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun, man. An hour goes by. Every time I do one of these, I swear to God, it's like the hour's over before it started. And I love our points of view. We're not all going to agree on everything, which is fantastic. And if people want to really get into Michael's head, Michael G. Dash is the entrepreneur, best-selling author, Chasing the High. Show us the picture again, because that's fantastic. He took it himself on the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. Any idea what that mountain is on the other? You're looking off the top of Kilimanjaro at a different
Yeah, I think
Pete?
it's called like Moshi or something. I'm not completely sure.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Is that morning or is that night?
Morning. No, we climb all night long, so we hit sunset, and you can see the sun is beaming down right there.
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic. Chasing the High, Michael G.
If your audience wants to read, I give the first 2 chapters away free at www.michaelg-.com/book.
michaelg-.com/book. Guys, go check him out. Obviously, he's got a lot of experience, and he's got a lot of perspectives, and he put it all together in a book, which is amazing to me, and something I want to try to do one of these days. You got it done. I appreciate it. Michael, that was a great conversation. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, please read it.
Yes, go get his book. All right, everybody, that wraps. Go buy 2 of them. It's a great Christmas gift, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Christmas is coming. Buy Michael's book. That wraps up this episode. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Be sure to check us out. You know where: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, Google, Reddit, Spotify, Jerry Brazy on all of them. Send us your questions to questions@jerrybrazy.com. And remember, opportunities are everywhere, people, but you got to go get them. Peace out.